Hi everybody, this is my part 3 interview with Leon Southgate talking about Orgone energy, Wilhelm Reich, James Demeo, and this is the last little section. It's more like a general discussion between us in regards to homeopathy, the effects of homeopathy. I talk about tissue salts corresponding with Chinese medicine, my take on this, and generally we talk about a little bit about the political situation, of course, and just general takes on acupuncture and some research of obviously that Leon and I have done, and it's more like a general discussion. So enjoy, feel free to comment for those interested. This is just my little dedication to Wilhelm Reich and James Demeo for their monumental work in understanding Orgone ether and the psyche of human nature, pretty much. And yeah, fascinating subjects, and we're only really just touching the surface. So please enjoy part 3 and comment below if you like this material. I'm more than happy to assist people in research and understanding of this subject. So enjoy. Yeah. But the interesting you're saying that. I remember that. What was that last book Reich wrote? You can't get a copy of it. It was Contact with Space. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think I wrote to James about that, but I don't think he got. Maybe he messaged me. Maybe he didn't get my message because I got off Facebook. Maybe he did, and then I think I got shadow banned on Facebook, and I couldn't. But why was I saying that? Because yeah, I remember. I think there was something. Maybe in one of the heretics' notebooks, James pulled something out of that work when Reich was doing a lot of his cloud busting, and he was noticing what he thought was stars were moving in the sky every time he was doing this, but they were actually obviously some kind of crafts.
Yeah.
So it sounded like something was observing what he was, tuning into, or he discovered. And I wanted to really get more. I really wanted to get that book, but you can't find it anywhere, right?
Well, I think it's been reprinted by not by publishers now, but by if the Wilhelm Reich Museum had started redoing it about a year or two ago.
Oh, okay.
If you look at the Wilhelm Reich Museum, the people who run Orgone, they were reprinting Contact with Space themselves. I think they might have a publisher that's doing it now, but it's literally only been really recently.
I'll check that out for sure.
Yeah, I'd managed to get hold of an old copy from I think electroacupuncture researcher or some. But I'd managed to get hold of a copy, an old one, which is a bit easier in this country because there's more kind of sort of esoteric or researchers knocking about. I think someone was clearing out their library, and
I think the UK is a lot more open than Australia.
It's a funny bunch of funny bunch of contradictions, the UK, because we're kind of like the head of the beast, but the beast doesn't want to punch itself in the face. So it's hard to attack England as much as, say, Germany or Australia, because we're kind of too close to where all the bankers hang out and stuff. Like
City of London's run the whole gig. But I know, but well, you guys can still do homeopathy there. I mean, Australia's been. I mean, they've been. Man, here
they banned homeopathy.
They haven't banned it, but they've done their best to slag it off every way they can in the mainstream media. But from what I don't know if you can go to a college and study it here anymore. Maybe you can by correspondence, but they've really tried to, get rid of it. I mean, I feel sorry for homeopaths. I think personally, I think homeopathy is one of the futures of medicine, and and the way they're treating homeopaths in this country is bloody wow. It's next level.
Yeah, they had persecuted homeopathy here, but they've had to do it subtly. Like there used to be able to get homeopathy on the NHS, and that's been gradually pushed out.
Yeah, right.
And then there was a homeopathic clinic in Liverpool, and they managed to get that shut down. And there was they managed to exclude this homeopathy hospital or clinic, exclude its data from a Parliament report, so that they could shut it down because its data was good. So that I don't think if they tried to close homeopathic schools, there'd be an outcry. So that they have to do on the sly in this country. Like we've just had a double coup, and like it's gone under the hardly been noticed. I mean, they took people suspect that something happened to Boris Johnson when he was in hospital, because he wasn't the same person when he came out. That someone had done something to him in there, and then they get rid of him, replace him with another leader who no one really wanted, and then they get rid of her as well when she tries to do something that perhaps. Well, she tried to be a bit Thatcherite and cut taxes, and they didn't like that, so they got rid of the chancellor. But we've like had a coup, and no one's even noticed hardly, which is a very British way of doing things. But it'd be very hard to ban homeopathy or outright.
I don't think that. Yeah, it just seems. There's been a lot of over the years, a lot of stuff in the media here. I mean, I never watch mainstream news. I haven't really since the whole COVID thing. I had enough of the crap, but I don't have a TV actually. But I know
too depressing, isn't it?
It's too. Yeah, I don't want to be just kind of focus on my destiny and that's it,
Yeah.
But yeah, there has been. I'm pretty sure there's still you can still homeopath around practicing, but I think it's not as easy to study it here because there used to be the colleges, and I don't think even the colleges. I mean, you can still do Chinese medicine, no problem, or I think naturopathy, but I think a straight homeopath course, I'm not sure. Just seems to be.
It's more of a direct challenge to pharmaceuticals because with acupuncture, I mean, you can become primary healthcare. Like there's that clinic in Oregon that treats hundreds of people a week, but it's quite labor intensive. Whereas with homeopathy, you can treat a lot of people cheaply. With and with tablets that kind of bit like pharmaceuticals. So I think that it makes the big pharma more nervous than the other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I use them clinically as a backup. I just use those 12 tissue salts. But particularly for pediatrics, and I mean, like they say, most behavioral problems in children are just calcium phosphate deficiency.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I just did. I mean, I've been doing this cell salt series on my YouTube channel on just the sun sign astrology around it because it all relates to the signs in the zodiac, and I've noticed clinically because I do a lot of astrological consults, and But there's definitely something to that. And I had recently, I had a kid come into my clinic whose mother brought him in, and he was only 2.5 or something, and is waking up with really violent dreams, like, and screaming and yelling. And I gave him, I just gave him some acupuncture, very basic acupuncture. And as you can only do on a kid, in and out. And then 3 salts. And I didn't hear from this woman. I thought, what the hell happened? I must have scared her off or something. And then the clinic I was working at, the lady who runs it, said, oh no, she contacted me like a week later and said he's absolutely fine. Just after that, no problem.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing I really like about those 12 mineral salts is they really relate to Taoism and Taoist alchemy. Like, I made a lot of correlations with these salts and how they connect with, and I'm writing a book on it actually at the moment, with Chinese medical diagnosis. For instance, like wind cold, wind heat, you can just use iron and potassium chloride.
That's very interesting. That'd be very useful.
Yeah, it's extremely useful. I've noticed I've just been doing this in clinic and making notes, and
because then you could do a TCM diagnosis and use homeopathy to treat. That sounds very very useful.
Just using this just using those 12 mineral salts, which I kind of got into from I guess the book. There's an old book by an esoteric, I guess, biochemist called George W. Carey. He wrote this book called The Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. And I was all connected to the Bible, funnily enough. But it's you'd be interested in this. This is cool, especially if you got kids. But with my son and all this over the years, when my son's 9 now, but when I just use, like, he got a few styes when he was young, and I just used silica, and they literally went overnight, and
so what was that called? Zodiac and
the Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation, George W. Carey. On my channel, I've got a 20-minute little presentation on it. Just have a listen to that. That'll give you a good idea. I'll put our talk up in parts, I think, Leon. This is going on for a while. This is really cool. But
I'll look at that video definitely.
It's in my site's called Astro Pillars on YouTube. You probably know. I think I may have sent you the link, but
I had a look around.
I just did this stuff out of boredom. I had a bit of time, and I realized after doing these videos, a lot of people have been contacted. I originally wanted to do it just for Chinese astrology, but I found a lot more people contacting me about these cell salts. And I think it's probably more of a universal thing. People can relate to it a bit more.
Well, I mean, the homeopathy is amazing. I mean, I remember one time a kid ran into a door in a play area, like the corner of a door, and it was full speed, and they were howling, and the kid had we had some arnica with us, and we gave the mum an arnica tablet, and she gave it to the kid, and the kid was just transformed within seconds of taking the arnica.
It's cool, isn't it? It's amazing.
And didn't even bruise. I think it partly depends with homeopathy how strong your energy field is, because you're putting like a homeopathic signature into an energy field. So if the energy field's very strong, it's going to work stronger. So like a child might have a stronger energy field than an elderly person. So the homeopathy would work stronger.
That's a very good point. I think that's why, because children, their chi's so vital. They're so full of yang, and then they're I mean, if they've come from a good good home and there's no real trauma. Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing with animals. I mean, I've used it on my dog, you know, and it's just like, whoa, you know, skin rashes and things like this, right? It's just like gone. As animals seem to have a much quicker healing process than what we do. They're obviously on a different kind of time frame.
I've seen that in cats. Well, my ex likes pedigree cats, and they get eye problems, and so she gives them homeopathy for the eye problems, and it always works.
And I've noticed over, I mean, switched on vets now are starting to use things like acupuncture, homeopathy, and I mean, I've noticed some of them. Someone came into the clinic down in Torquay where I work, wanting a herb remedy for a dog, which a vet recommended. For it was just one of the Romania formulas for the dog had, you know, obviously old 15 and was having pretty bad kidney problems. So it's really getting out there. And speaking of that bloodletting before, I've had a lot of horse trainers come in. They tell me, they always nick the horses' vessels to clear the, you know, and they get, you know, race horses, and even some people who race the greyhounds, they do this, and they get a lot more longevity out of their animals.
I can believe that. The veterinary medicine is very stitched up in this country. It's quite, but if it'd be nice to start treating animals more, because it's very restricted. Any, like, technically even doing hands-on healing is restricted to vets, and no vet is going to do hands-on healing with an animal. It was unlikely to, because they've spent 7 years of their lives training in allopathic stuff.
And just want to drug them up.
But I mean, some vets are moving that way.
I think they're becoming a lot more open, you know. Especially here in Australia, I see it a lot. A lot of them are doing a little bit of acupuncture and getting into the herbs, which is cool, because their sensitivity is definitely different from ours. And like you're saying, I agree with you. I think with the homeopathy, if you're riddled with you know, deadly Orgone, and things like this, and your vital force is low, or your chi. It's like that first time when you dealing with autoimmune conditions and things, like people are that deficient, you fish the needle in, and then there's just nothing. They feel nothing. There's no bioenergetic movement at all going through this body. Sometimes it takes a few treatments, and then they go, wow, why are the needles feeling so strong today? I go, just because your body's healthier.
It's amazing.
So,
I'll have a look some more in at your website and not at your channel, because I'd be interested to see how you integrate the astrology and the you've integrated that into your Chinese practice.
Well, I think I was so interested when I started studying acupuncture. This is years ago. It must be after 9/11 or something. I was studying Chinese astrology at the same time, but there was very little info on it, and I found it to be very inaccurate. But I was always so into it. I was into planetary astrology, but it wasn't until the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, 6 years, I met this guy. I read his book on Chinese astrology. I go, geez, this is a really different take. This is fantastic. And I contacted him, and now he's just been my mentor. So I've been doing training with him the last 4 or 5 years, and I've been, man, it just totally opened up the whole thing to me.
And it's quite different from Western astrology, is it?
Yeah, it is a little bit. I always, when I do consultations with astrology, I do both. Because I'm a Gemini, I've got to have 2 things going on at the same time, you know. So,
I know a few Geminis.
So I do planetary with Chinese astrology, but I like doing both because I think
Mm,
planetary astrology is definitely
mm,
very good for a medical astrology and on the psychological level,
mm,
whereas and Chinese astrology in a way is like that, but
mm,
it's a little bit more I wouldn't say it's I find planetary astrology deeper, but I'm still
mm,
got I still know a lot about Chinese astrology, but
mm.
I'm still finding I've still got a bit of stuff to learn in terms of
Yeah.
just working out. I'm one of these people, I like doing the readings because I do them a lot on my patients, so I can really see
Mm,
and I get
yeah.
feedback from them. So
Mm,
this is one of the great ways because I think it's with astrology, it's like well, it's like any practice. You need to practice it
mm,
and get feedback from people to really understand how things
mm.
work. So I'm lucky I'm
Yeah.
like that. A lot of my patients generally do end up having a reading with me at some
Mm,
stage, and then I can get some.
mm,
But I find it very interesting in terms of finding deficiencies. You know, when people with or
mm,
chronic fatigues, or it's really good for
mm,
understanding timings of things. People can go through some, health crisis or have a difficult aspect that could be giving them
mm,
something like an autoimmune
mm,
condition or chronic fatigue. But it's not
mm,
forever because there can
mm.
be transits and things like this. And I think a lot of people just like hearing
Yeah.
that feedback. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I can imagine because like chronic fatigue is a huge thing, and
yeah, it's massive
the
now. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, it's massive
and
now.
the
And I
mm,
think it's a lot to do with what we're talking about before in terms of the radio waves and the electromagnetic pollution
yeah.
on one
Yeah.
level, and other people can have like my ex-wife, for example, had
Mm,
an autoimmune condition. She
mm,
had Sjogren's syndrome.
mm,
I mean, she's a workaholic. She's Taiwanese, so she was just,
mm.
they don't stop working. Their work ethic's next level. Plus, I mean, she's
Yeah.
a Virgo. The Virgos, she's
Mm,
a Virgo, has a lot
mm,
of planets in Virgo,
mm,
and they're just workaholics. They're the next level. They're
mm,
perfectionists, and she's a researcher as well,
mm.
and an
Yeah.
economist. But
Gosh.
and
Mm,
but she had this. That's why
mm,
but funnily enough, speaking of that, she really was sensitive to the orgone
mm,
blanket. I thought she was really insensitive because, in a way, she just,
mm,
but I think because she's so mental, she just can't feel her
mm.
body that well. But when she got in,
Yeah.
and funnily enough, homeopathy works brilliantly on
Mm,
her,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
the orgone blanket. I think
Mm,
that's actually the best better than Chinese medicine for her.
mm, yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I've noticed that with some people that they're very like my ex-wife's very she gets affected by homeopathy more than me.
Mm.
There seems like I mainly seem to be affected with movement therapies like osteopathy and energy therapies like
Mm.
acupuncture. And
Yeah.
certain homeopathic remedies work for me, but only specific ones.
Mm.
Whereas for her, she's really sensitive to a broader range of homeopathic
Mm.
stuff, and um, she's only went in the Orgone box once, and
Mm.
I tried I tried an experiment with her, and it, it went wrong, and I don't think she'd ever get an Orgone box again. um, I I I tried overwhelming her meridian system
Mm.
with Orgone,
Mm.
and it kind of flips her back into a past life experience, and it
Ah,
was a bit
right.
frightening.
Wow. Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
so so yeah, I was a bit gung ho in those days. So I
Yeah,
think
I think it's when you discover these things, you can get
mm,
I mean, I was like that with acupuncture. I mean, I'd do the cupping and the
mm,
gua sha and do it all over my
oh, it's
body,
great, Russia.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, and
yeah,
I think that's one of the best things well, for breaking up armoring, right? And yeah, you know, absolutely. I mean, people have really got a lot of liturgy with fire, and I think gua sha for people who've gone through chemo is brilliant. I mean, it gets rid of those fire toxins in the body. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. There's cupping is fantastic. I mean, however cupping was first thought of, I mean, it's just a unique kind of massage energy treatment. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's sensational. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah.
But it's no wonder that the Chinese got to like 1.5 billion before anyone else, because they do know how to look after themselves.
Well, I think that's why Rockefeller had to take over the Peking Medical Institute in the day, didn't he? I mean, because he knew once he broke through that market, he's going to have. It's very interesting how. I mean, when I went to Taiwan, my ex-wife was Taiwanese, like I was saying, and she was telling me, I found out Taiwan has the highest antibiotic use in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and but they still Taiwan's become like more Western, but they know. I think the saying is in Taiwan is if you got acute disease, you see the doctor. If you got chronic disease, you see the herbalist.
Yeah, there's quite a mechanistic attitude towards even Chinese medicine in some parts of Asia, I'd imagine, or so I've been told. I've never been to China myself. But,
yeah, it's bizarre. Like I think there's a when I did my internship in southern China, which is in Nanning, Guangxi, southern province, the hospitals there, you'd go in and then I was mainly doing stroke rehab just with acupuncture, but on one side they have the herb dispenser and the other side the pharmaceutical. But it was kind of cool because it was all balanced out, you know. And with Taiwan though, I think Taiwan, well, they're anti-communist and they like to think they've got the one-upmanship over China, which I think they do, because Taiwan's an awesome place. If you ever get a chance to go somewhere, it's magic. It's beautiful. Yeah, now it's an easy place to travel with kids, and you know, food's great, and you get the real. If you go to the Palace Museum and things like this, the ancient Chinese culture, wow, it's phenomenal. But
gosh, yeah.
But they really do have it's very interesting how Western they kind of have become though with the science, and I don't know whether it's
it was a bit like that in in do you remember when was it HRT, or that there was some kind of magical rejuvenating drug that it was, I think it was either HRT or some other type of menopause type drug, and when it came out, the Chinese thought it was treated it as a super Jing tonic, like JIN.
Right, yeah.
And they were really impressed with it. They thought, wow, this is like Jing in a tablet or Jing in a bottle. And they can be quite. I mean, you can use acupuncture in quite a Western way. I mean, you can there's certain points you can use like drugs, you can anti-inflammatory points or antipyretic points, and I mean, I do that sometimes if you got a fever and you use the points like a drug, but I suppose if you've had the Chinese medical theory for millennia, it might need to like sort of go abroad to be rejuvenated and then recycled back in the over time.
Yeah, and I think the whole take on the well, I guess they had all their bases covered. I mean, primarily it was all about health cultivation, wasn't it? Whereas I
Mm,
guess in the West we get ourselves into a state of, oh, I've drunk too much over the years and eaten a lot of
mm,
lousy food, and then we think, oh, I better take notice of my health, But when you burn out all your
mm,
chi and blood, and you want the three treasures, Jing, Chi, and well, what is it
mm,
called, Shen?
yeah,
But by that time, it can be too late. But
yeah.
I think but interesting enough, when I was into Tai Chi and things, I read one study I read that Tai Chi is the only exercise that really generates the most bone density.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah, acupuncture
Mm.
is very more popular than herbal medicine here in Australia, and
Yeah,
whereas you probably is that
that's
the
the
same
same
in
here.
UK? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I, I mean, they made herbal medicine a bit harder that they to the ready-made pre-packed formulas that that you used to be able to prescribe. They banned those, so you have to be a like a degree qualified herbalist to prescribe Chinese herbs or use them, which made it a bit harder to get hold of Chinese herbs. Like
yeah,
some acupuncturists used to use like blood building or cooling herbs
mm,
that you could get ready made in little pillules.
yeah,
Um, and there's some
mm,
amazing herbal creams that
mm,
are used for eczema in kids. That's just got rid of eczema that wasn't responding to any Western treatment. But
mm,
the but overall, I think because like British people and are quite sensitive to the tastes and things, they and there's just yeah, somehow yeah, the acupuncture is the primary one,
yeah.
and herbs is quite a long way behind, really.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. It's funny. A lot of the Asian patients I see here will go for the
mm,
herbs more than the acupuncture, and the Western people go for the acupuncture, not the herbs.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I suspect that quite a lot of the Chinese community in the UK doesn't see has their own practitioners
yeah,
or even self prescribes and get stuff direct from China because
yeah,
over the years I've seen very few Chinese um, people and I mean the Chinese community has been here like a century and a half in Liverpool,
yeah,
um, and yet you don't seem so. And I've heard NHS people years ago saying like half the Chinese in Merseyside aren't even registered with a GP, so they must be looking after themselves, I think.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
GP is the British term for family doctor.
yeah, we use that here too.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that
Mm,
well, I mean, that's just it. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I
mm,
am writing this book on the cell salt.
mm,
I think most parents or anyone, I mean, when you understand the basics of certain things, you can
mm,
just, it's very easy to look after your family. I mean, obviously,
mm,
you only go to the medicos when you either break an arm or you're in serious
mm.
trouble. But most day-to-day things, you don't need to.
Well, we might have to become a lot more self-sufficient in the future.
I think so.
I mean, who knows what could happen in the next year or two? Anything could happen.
Yeah,
We could have the internet switched off.
yeah,
We could have World War III.
yeah,
We could have food shortages, riots.
yeah.
Um, I mean, literally nothing would surprise me now. Uh,
Yeah, I just remember. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100% on that. It's been too calm and too quiet here for too long. They've got to have something conjuring up.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
because they don't like people all of a sudden starting to get on with their lives and look a little happy. So you got to
Mm,
bring more misery down. I mean, we've got a lot of flooding going on
yeah.
here at the moment. I don't know if you do in UK, but
Mm,
there's a lot of water coming down in Australia at the
yeah.
moment.
Yeah, all our weather's been opposite. I've
Mm.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Um just my throat was a bit dry, so I just had some chewing gum. Yeah, all our weather in Europe, and I've been speaking to an Orgone researcher in Italy, and he's more up on this than me, and he was saying the North African and Middle Eastern weather and the European weather has kind of been swapped. The 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 moisture that you'd normally get in Europe has been going to places where it's not normally um, around in
Going,
crazy.
yeah.
And the dryness that you'd normally get in the Sahara and across the Middle East has been coming up to the Europe. So I mean, it's quite easy to mess around with weather patterns. I mean, if the general public knew, I mean, literally for a couple of £1,000, you can change weather across half a continent. I mean, it's that easy.
Yeah.
That's just with one form of technology that we know about.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
there's
the Australian government here's got the Weather Modification Act that I can't
mm,
remember whether it was in the 60s or 70s, but you talk about these climate people who are
mm,
so into climate change, and you drop this
mm,
truth bomb to them, and they look at you like you're from the planet Vulcan. And then,
mm.
you know, just go to the web and look it up, and they look at it and they're dumbfounded.
But what's the Weather Modification Act? I know that if you're attempting to change the weather in the US, you're supposed to inform their bureau, but I wasn't aware that there was any.
There's one in Australia that's on the government side, and I can't remember. I think I've got it on my Telegram page.
Mm,
Yeah, they've got something. So I
what that it's illegal to try and influence the weather
no, the
in
government's
Australia,
allowed
or
to. They're allowed to. They're telling
the
you that.
government admits that they do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're allowed. They modify it, right? And
Mm,
I think astrologically, I mean, particularly the eclipses for this year, when the
mm,
South Node's in Scorpio, there's high chance of flooding, landslides, and
mm,
things like this. The water can really
yeah.
come down. A lot of people think they're doing cloud seeding and things like that. I wouldn't doubt that, because I know these guys use the astrology,
Mm,
so they will use it to
mm,
their advantage somehow and make it probably just more torrential than it needs to be.
yeah.
But
I, I mean,
yeah,
cloud seeding is dead old
yeah,
technology. I
it's
mean,
old tech. Like,
uh,
yeah, it's nothing new with that,
they
apart from the
probably
flooding.
use it, but yeah, maybe as a
Mm,
cover, or as
mm.
a whole raft of techniques, they might throw a bit of cloud seeding in as well to disguise what they're really up to.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. Um,
they, I mean, they've got cloud busters. Well, they had in the 80s that they had cloud busters in UK, in Anglia. I think that there was a weird hurricane in the late 80s, and I
mm,
think that was caused by a military experiment with cloud busters.
mm,
The part of that whole UFO thing at Bentwaters Air Base,
yeah.
they documented that they had a bunch of cloud busters at the Bentwaters Air Base, and
Mm,
the recent very dry weather in the UK, I noticed, seemed to um, have some kind of locus on the area where those cloud busters used to be. But I mean, there's so many. That's just one technology. I mean, there's probably other ways of. If you got this ether, that there'll be half a dozen ways of influencing that ether, and any influence on the ether will create a change in the weather.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know that those types of power hungry people don't tend to like orgone technology, because it's not as mechanistic. You have to get in touch with your right brain self to use it, and it's kind of a nature technology. It's not so mechanistic. So they probably prefer electrical based technology. I'd have thought. But either way, there's the weather is easily manipulated. It probably doesn't always do what it's told, but it can be.
Yeah. But I think they would be
nudging
doing
one area. Yeah.
They would be doing whatever they can to take advantage of it, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it's impacting food supplies and.
I mean, it will, and I think you're right. I think, I mean, I try and get as prepped up as I can, but within reason, I don't get into the trying to get, I don't do it out of fear mongering and panic. Whatever comes. But you got to have your wits about you a little bit and be a bit prepared, because after what they've pulled off the last 2 years, they can do whatever the hell they want, really. And
definitely.
and especially in Australia, they'll get really, I can't see much resistance. But
that must be hard.
It is, because
there's all sorts of
because you do need the collective. You need people to really band together and say no. But most people, Jesus, man, if they've had 4 or 5 of these things, I don't know how many they've had, but Jesus, I mean, how many more do you? The weird thing about it is, a lot of people who have done these kind of things to themselves, they know they get sick from them, and they keep going back for more. This is the really amazing thing I found to be. You kind of think, what the hell's going on in someone's psyche? Are they so desperate for approval from the crowd that they? It's bizarre. It's just bizarre.
It's a kind of trauma reaction, I guess, or kind of it's being a domesticated animal, I suppose. You train the livestock long enough and hard enough, they'll trot along to the milking parlors of their own accord.
It's true. Anyway, Leon, I probably better leave it there. We've been going, I could go on for hours, but
it's been great. Great chatting to you.
Same to you. Thanks for your time. I'm going to I'll put this up. I'll have to probably